Hi, my name is R. Gary Raham, the author and illustrator of The Viral Life of Plants and Everything Else. I was pleased to have this article chosen as a finalist for the 2021 Colorado Authors League Awards in the essay category. In the year of COVID, I wanted to write an article for Colorado Gardener magazine that demonstrated how important viruses are in the life of all creatures, and not always in a bad way. In fact, in plants, viruses sometimes help create beautiful variations attractive to gardeners, something that was pointed out to me by my longtime friend and editor, Jane Schellenberger. For example, one of the illustrations in the article is of this variety of tulip, which was very popular back in the 18th century. And also one of the other illustrations is one of my own, and it shows a kind of virus which attacks bacterial cells. Well, without further ado, I would like to read The Viral Life of Plants and Everything Else. We tend not to think about viruses until one of them causes misery, perhaps to us directly or by causing diseases in the plants we cherish and depend on. In fact, viruses are literally everywhere. Viruses are biology's living matrix, as author Carl Zimmer reminded me in his 2011 book, A Planet of Viruses. You and I, for example, walk around in bodies that are about one-third virus. Viral activity in photosynthetic organisms produces about 10% of the oxygen we need to survive. Yet, we know viruses mostly by the damage they cause. The Dutch scientist Martinus Beijerinck discovered the very first virus less than 150 years ago. It was the contagious living fluid that caused tobacco mosaic virus. In the late 19th century, when Beijerinck made his discovery, scientists already knew about bacteria, tiny microbes that can cause deadly diseases like cholera in people or crown galls in woody plants. Beijerinck, however, could squeeze fluids from tobacco plants through porcelain filters capable of blocking bacterial cells. The resulting potent fluid still created the same mottled leaf disease in other tobacco plants. Whatever agency was in the contagious living fluid was even tinier. Zimmer used a great metaphor for explaining how tiny. Sprinkle 1 cubic grain of salt onto a plate. As small as that grain is, one could line up 10 human skin cells end to end along one edge. However, it would take 100 bacteria to stretch along that same distance, and 1,000 typical viruses. Most viruses are nothing more than a strand of RNA or DNA, the nucleic acids that contain life's genetic blueprints, coated with a shell of protein called a capsid. Viruses are essentially raw genetic code that must hijack the metabolic machinery of plants, animals, and microbes to reproduce. Plants, for the most part, are more resistant to viral attack than other creatures. Plant cells resemble a fortress surrounded by sturdy cellulose ramparts. Nevertheless, when weather beats up on plants, they get overpruned by zealous gardeners, or invaded by insects, fungi, nematodes, or bacteria. Viruses may invade like opportunistic Mongol hordes storming a Roman wall. Plant viruses may also travel via infected seeds or during vegetative reproduction. Plant viral diseases tend to be named descriptively. One such disease is tulip break disease, because the causative virus breaks up the color pattern of the tulip bloom into bars, streaks, and flame-like patterns, pretty enough to make a tulip fancier's heart beat faster. One famous variety, named Semper Augustus, that existed in 17th century Holland, could fetch prices equivalent to $1,600 per bulb in today's currency. I use the past tense in describing this variety because the virus, left to its own devices, ultimately shrinks bulbs in successive generations until it can no longer flower. Unfortunately, there are virtually no cures for plant viral diseases. According to Regina Bailey of Thought Company, this means that infected plants must be destroyed to keep disease from spreading. Prevention is the best mode of action, making sure, for example, that seeds are virus-free, that potential virus vectors are controlled, and that harvest and planting methods don't promote viral spread. Sometimes viruses give back to their host in counterintuitive ways. A Cambridge study demonstrated that cucumber mosaic virus, or CMV, which also attacks tomato plants, causes the plants to produce odors more attractive to bumblebees than healthy plants. This helps the infected plants reproduce and indirectly promotes the spread of the virus as well. The authors describe this as symbiotic mutualism. Viruses, in fact, perform many necessary functions. They've been around since the dawn of life on Earth and may represent some of the earliest genetic coding ever produced on our planet. Big, fancy cells like yours, mine, and those of our tomato plants are relatively late afterthoughts in the alchemy of our garden planet. But they are afterthoughts that have incorporated strings of viral genes into their own genomes. As Zimmer says, we humans are an inextricable blend of mammal and virus. Remove our virus-derived genes and we would be unable to reproduce. We would probably also quickly fall victim to infections from other viruses. Because familiar viruses can't reproduce on their own and can go dormant indefinitely in crystal form, scientists for many years believed they were not truly living creatures. Now, however, we know about mimiviruses, giant viruses the size of bacteria that invade single-celled amoebae in the ocean. Amoebae are those charming blob-like protozoans first encountered in Biology 101. Mimiviruses actually can reproduce and can be invaded by other viruses. So, perhaps viruses represent Life Program 1.0. Ancient Romans would have used the word virus to describe a poison, slimy liquid or potent juice. Viruses certainly can poison us, but they also co-evolved with us to become potent partners built into the fabric of our existence. And sometimes, as with tulip brake virus, even their depredations can be beautiful. They certainly give biologists, not to mention botanists, epidemiologists, zoologists, and proctologists, plenty of job security, with proper social distancing, of course. So I hope you enjoyed this reading from my work while gaining deeper insights into the role of viruses in the living world. Again, my name is R. Gary Raham. The R stands for Richard, by the way. The last name is spelled R-A-H-A-M. Learn more about my writing and illustration projects at www.rgaryram.com. And if you're interested in periodic updates on my creative works, please sign up for my monthly newsletters.